Hi and welcome to the Archive of History. It is just before midnight. The moon has risen full and luminous over the river Yamuna, and its silver light falls upon a monument that seems to float between earth and heaven. The white marble glows with an inner radiance, as if the stone itself has captured moonlight and learned to hold it. The air is warm and still, carrying the faint scent of jasmine from the gardens below. You are standing before the Taj Mahal, and in this moment, beneath this ancient moon, time itself seems to slow and soften. This is a place built from grief, born from love, and shaped by hands that understood beauty as a form of prayer. Tonight we will journey into the heart of 17th-century Mughal India, to a time when emperors commanded the wealth of continents and architects dreamed in marble and precious stone. We will walk through palace gardens where fountains sang and roses bloomed in patterns that mirrored paradise itself. We will stand beside a grieving emperor who transformed his sorrow into the most beautiful building the world has ever known. We will watch as 20,000 craftsmen gathered from across Asia, each a master of their art, to create something that would outlive empires and speak across centuries. This is the story of the Taj Mahal, of Shah Jahan and Mumtaz Mahal, of love and loss, of devotion made visible in stone. Before we drift off, I am always curious to know where my listeners are tuning in from and what time it is that they are listening tonight. Let me know in the comments. And now let the noise of the modern world fade away. Settle into comfort. Close your eyes if you wish. Let us travel back to a time of silk and marble, of empire and artistry, to witness the creation of moonlit perfection. Our story begins in the gardens of Agra, in an empire at the height of its glory. Imagine the Mughal Empire in the year 1632. From the high walls of the Red Fort in Agra, you can see a city that sprawls along both banks of the sacred Yamuna River. The morning sun strikes domes and minarets, turning them to gold. The air hums with the sounds of a great capital, the call to prayer echoing from mosque towers, the bells of temple ceremonies, the voices of merchants in the bazaars that thread through neighborhoods both grand and humble. This is a world of profound sophistication, a civilization that has mastered the arts of architecture, poetry, miniature painting, and garden design. The Mughal court is the wealthiest in the world, its treasury filled with the revenues of a subcontinent, its workshops producing textiles so fine they are called woven air, its jewelers setting stones that kings in distant lands can only dream of possessing. You walk through the palace complex at dawn, when the sandstone walls are cool and the marble floors reflect the soft light filtering through carved screens. These screens, called jalis, are miracles of stone carving, each one a lattice of geometric patterns so intricate that they seem to be lace rather than rock. Through them, light and air move freely, but the gaze of strangers cannot penetrate. This is a place of carefully calibrated beauty, where every surface serves both function and aesthetics. The walls are inlaid with patterns of colored stone, flowers and vines rendered in precious materials. Lapis lazuli, from Afghanistan, creates the deep blue of petals. Jade from China forms leaves. Carnelian from Persia glows in shades of amber and rust. These are not painted decorations that will fade. These are stones chosen for their eternal colors, set into marble with such precision that you cannot slip a knife blade between them. In the gardens, the design follows ancient Persian principles. The charbagh, the fourfold garden that represents paradise on earth. Water channels divide the space into quarters, each one lined with cypress and fruit trees, each one carpeted with flowers that change with the seasons. In spring, roses bloom in shades of cream and crimson. In summer, jasmine fills the evening air with perfume so heady it seems to have weight and texture. In autumn, marigolds glow like small suns along the pathways. The water in the channels is not still. It moves, flowing from pool to pool, its sound a constant whisper that cools the air and the mind. At intervals, fountains rise and fall, their droplets catching light, creating rainbows in the morning sun. This is water as luxury, water as art. In a land where the monsoon rains are awaited with prayers and ceremonies, where drought can mean famine, and where the control of water is the foundation of power itself. The emperor who rules this empire is Shah Jahan, whose name means King of the World. He is in his 40th year, a man of refined tastes and fierce ambition, educated in Persian poetry and Indian philosophy, trained in warfare and statecraft, possessed of a vision that will reshape the architectural landscape of an entire subcontinent. He sits in the Diwani-Has, the hall of private audience, upon the Peacock Throne, a seat so laden with gold and precious stones that its value is beyond calculation. Above him, carved in Persian script into the marble arch, are words attributed to the medieval poet Amir Khusro. If there is paradise on earth, it is this, it is this, it is this. The hall itself seems to embody those words. Columns of white marble rise to support arches decorated with floral inlay work of breathtaking delicacy. The ceiling is painted with patterns in gold and ultramarine. Courtiers stand in careful hierarchies, their robes of silk and brocade signaling their ranks, their turbans set with jewels that catch the filtered light. Petitions are heard, judgments are rendered, poetry is recited. Musicians play ragas appropriate to the hour of the day. This is governance as performance, power made visible through beauty. But power in the Mughal Empire is not only about display. It is built on a complex system of administration that spans from the emperor's court to the smallest village. Mansabdars, nobles who hold military and civil ranks, collect revenue and maintain armies. Each province has its governors, its record keepers, its tax collectors. The road system allows messages and armies to move with speed across vast distances. Caravanserais provide shelter for travelers and merchants. The economy thrives on trade that reaches from the Mediterranean to the Indonesian archipelago, bringing silk from China, spices from the Moluccas, horses from Arabia, carpets from Persia, and taking in return the cotton textiles of Gujarat and Bengal, the indigo that dyes the world's fabrics, the saltpeter that makes gunpowder, the diamonds from Golconda that will grace the crowns of European kings. In this world of power and beauty, there are rules that govern every aspect of life, from the clothes one wears to the language one uses in addressing superiors. Courtiers bow according to precise protocols. The emperor appears at set hours at the Jaroka window, where common people can see him and present petitions, a tradition that maintains the fiction, and sometimes the reality, of the ruler's accessibility to even his humblest subjects. Women of the royal household live in the zenana, the women's quarters, a world within a world where they exercise power and influence far beyond what outsiders imagine. The empress, when there is one, can shape policy through her counsel to the emperor. Royal women commission mosques and gardens, sponsor poets and scholars, manage vast estates. This is not a world where women are merely ornamental. They are players in the great game of dynasty and succession, their intelligence and ambition as sharp as any man's. The culture of the Mughal court is a synthesis, a blending of Persian, Central Asian and Indian traditions into something unique. The official language of administration is Persian, the language of poetry and high culture, but the emperor and his courtiers are fluent in multiple tongues. Sanskrit scholars are honored. Hindu festivals are observed alongside Islamic ones. The paintings created in the royal ateliers show this fusion clearly. Mughal miniatures take the Persian tradition of delicate line work and jewel-like colors and infuse it with Indian attention to natural detail, to the specific curve of a mango tree's branches, to the way light falls on flowing water, to the expressions on individual faces in a court scene. These paintings are made on paper so fine it is almost translucent, with brushes of squirrel hair that taper to a single strand, with colors ground from minerals and plants, with gold leaf so thin it seems to float. A single painting might take months to complete, passing through the hands of multiple specialists, one for drawing the composition, another for applying the colors, another for the gold work, yet another for the faces and finest details. This is the world Shah Jahan has inherited and shaped, a world where art and power are inseparable, where beauty is not decoration but a statement of imperial authority, where the greatest achievements of human craft are placed in service of creating an earthly paradise. It is a world at its zenith, wealthy beyond measure, confident in its cultural superiority, capable of mobilizing resources on a scale that staggers the imagination. And it is into this world that a love story unfolds, one that will transform grief into architecture and create a monument that outlasts the empire itself. The story of the Taj Mahal begins not with death, but with life, with a young prince who first saw a girl in a bazaar and knew that his fate had changed forever. The year is 1612. Prince Khurram, not yet emperor, is 19 years old and walking through the Meena Bazaar, a special market held within the palace grounds where royal women can shop and socialize away from the public eye. The stalls are hung with silks and shawls, with jewelry and cosmetics, with all the luxuries that delight the women of the court. It is here among the colors and voices and perfumes that he sees her. Her name is Arjumand Banu Begum. She is 15 years old, the daughter of a Persian noble who serves the empire with distinction. She is selling silk and glass beads at a stall, and there is something in her bearing, in the intelligence that shows in her eyes, that captures the prince's attention completely. He approaches. They speak. The conversations that follow, over the days and weeks that come after, reveal a mind that matches his own, a woman who can discuss poetry and philosophy, who understands statecraft, who possesses both beauty and wisdom. This is not mere physical attraction, though that is certainly present. This is recognition, the sense that he has found his match, his complement, the one person who can share the burden and glory of the life that awaits him. But royal marriages are not simple matters of the heart. There are alliances to consider, political advantages to be weighed. Prince Khurram is already married to a Persian princess, a match arranged for diplomatic purposes. His father, Emperor Jahangir, and the court astrologers must be consulted. The alignment of the stars must be deemed favorable, and so 5 years pass between that first meeting and the wedding day. 5 years of correspondence, of meetings under carefully supervised conditions, of a love that deepens precisely because it cannot yet be consummated. When they finally marry in 1613, the ceremony is magnificent, a week-long celebration involving the entire court. But for the prince and his bride, the true joy is simply in finally being together. She is given a new name by her father-in-law the emperor, Mumtaz Mahal, meaning the exalted one of the palace, or the chosen one of the palace, depending on the translation. It is a name that speaks to the high regard in which she is held, to the recognition that she is not simply another royal wife but someone exceptional, and she proves herself worthy of that name, in ways both public and private. She becomes her husband's closest advisor, the one person whose counsel he trusts above all others. In court gatherings, he watches her reactions, reads her subtle signals, seeks her opinion on matters of state. She has an apartment adjacent to his own, connected by a private passage, and it is there in those private hours that the real governance of the empire often takes place. When Prince Khurram becomes Emperor Shah Jahan in 1628, after a succession struggle that requires ruthlessness and strategic brilliance, Mumtaz Mahal takes her place as empress with a grace and authority that wins the respect of the court. She is given the imperial seal, an honor granted to no other Mughal empress, which means she has the power to review and approve official documents. She accompanies the emperor on military campaigns, not remaining behind in pampered safety but traveling with the army, sharing the hardships and dangers of life on campaign. This is unheard of for a woman of her status, but Shah Jahan cannot bear to be separated from her, and she for her part sees her role as being by his side wherever that might lead. Their relationship is the subject of poetry and admiration throughout the empire. Court chroniclers describe them as inseparable, as two souls in one body. The emperor writes verses for her, comparing her to the moon, to the rose, to all the conventional images of Persian love poetry, but also to more unusual things, to the architecture he loves, to the gardens they walk through together. She in turn manages the practical aspects of his life with an efficiency that allows him to focus on his grand architectural projects and his vision for the empire. She reviews petitions from women seeking justice or charity. She commissions buildings of her own, gardens and mosques that reflect her own aesthetic sense. She is mother to 14 children over the 19 years of their marriage, a staggering number even by the standards of royal families in that era, each pregnancy risking her life, each birth a triumph over the dangers that make childbirth the leading cause of death for women of all classes. The children who survive, 8 of them, are raised with care and attention. The princes receive the education appropriate to potential rulers, training in administration, warfare, poetry, and the arts. The princesses are educated as well, learning multiple languages, studying literature and history, developing the skills that will allow them to navigate the complex world of court politics. Mumtaz Mahal is involved in all of it, in the selection of tutors, in the planning of marriages that will forge useful alliances, in the delicate work of balancing the ambitions and rivalries of her sons, knowing that when Shah Jahan eventually dies, those sons will likely tear the empire apart in a succession war. This is the shadow that hangs over all Mughal families, the knowledge that the system has no clear rules for succession, that each generation must fight to determine who will rule, that brothers will become enemies, and fathers may have to imprison or execute their own sons to maintain order. But in the years when Shah Jahan and Mumtaz Mahal are together, such dark futures seem distant. They travel together to Kashmir, to the mountain valleys where the air is cool even in summer and the gardens are fed by streams that flow from snowmelt. They commission pavilions of white marble that seem to float on the surfaces of lakes. They watch the sunset turn the peaks gold and pink. They return to Agra for the winter, to the palaces where fires are lit in the evening and the courtyards are sheltered from the wind. They go on pilgrimage together to the shrine of Moinuddin Chishti at Ajmer, fulfilling vows and seeking blessings. They attend the ceremonies that mark the great festivals, Eid al-Fitr at the end of Ramadan, Eid al-Adha with its ritual sacrifices, Nowruz, the Persian New Year, when the court gathers in splendor and gifts are exchanged and the emperor weighs himself against gold and silver that is then distributed to the poor. In all of this, what is most remarkable is not the public display, but the private devotion. The historical records, the accounts of courtiers and chroniclers, all emphasize the same thing. This is a love match, rare in royal circles, a relationship built on genuine affection and respect. Shah Jahan, who has the power to take any woman in the empire as a concubine, who could marry multiple wives for political advantage, remains essentially monogamous. He has his earlier wives, the ones married before Mumtaz Mahal, but they live in comfortable obscurity, honored but not loved. After Mumtaz Mahal becomes empress, he takes no other wives. She is enough, she is everything. And when the court poets write about the emperor's love for his empress, they are not engaging in mere flattery. They are describing something real, something visible to everyone who sees them together, a bond that has become legendary even before tragedy strikes. 19 years pass in this way, years of governance and building, of children born and raised, of an empire maintained through intelligence and force, of a marriage that deepens rather than grows stale. And then, in the spring of 1631, everything changes. The emperor is on campaign in the Deccan, the vast plateau region of southern India, where rebellious kingdoms must be brought to heel and Mughal authority re-established. It is a necessary campaign but a difficult one, fought in heat and dust far from the comforts of Agra. Mumtaz Mahal, pregnant with their 14th child, has insisted on coming along, as she always does. She cannot bear to be separated from her husband, and he cannot bear to be without her. So the imperial camp moves south, a city of tents and soldiers and camp followers, bringing the court into the wilderness. In the town of Burhanpur, in a palace that serves as temporary headquarters, Mumtaz Mahal goes into labor. It is the month of June, the heat already building toward the monsoon season. The birth is difficult from the start. The physicians and midwives attend her with all their skill, but childbirth in this era, even with the best care available, is a gamble against death. Hours pass. The empress suffers, and then after a labor that exhausts her completely, she gives birth to a daughter. The child lives. But Mumtaz Mahal, weakened beyond recovery, begins to fade. Shah Jahan sits by her bedside, holding her hand, watching as the woman who has been his companion for 19 years slips away from him. She is lucid enough, in those final hours, to speak to him, to extract promises. She asks him not to marry again, or if he must, to treat his new wife with kindness. She asks him to be good to their children, to guide them well, and she asks for something else, something that will change the course of architectural history. She asks him to build something beautiful for her, a tomb that will be worthy of their love, a monument that will ensure she is remembered not as one more forgotten empress, but as someone whose life and death mattered, whose story deserves to be told in marble and stone. He promises. He would promise her anything in this moment, but this particular promise resonates with everything in his nature, with his love of architecture, with his need to create beauty, with his understanding that buildings can speak across centuries in ways that words cannot. She dies on the 17th of June, 1631. The emperor's grief is immediate and total. He collapses. For days he sees no one, speaks to no one, eats almost nothing. When he finally emerges from his chambers, those who see him are shocked. His beard, black when he entered, has gone white. His face is haggard, aged by a decade in a matter of days. He will not wear colorful clothes again. He will not listen to music. He will observe a period of mourning so strict that it alarmed his courtiers, who fear for his health and his sanity. But slowly, As the months pass, the numbness begins to give way to something else: purpose, a sense of mission. He has made a promise to the woman he loved, and he will keep it. He will build her a tomb unlike any the world has ever seen, a structure that will make poets weep and emperors envious, a monument that will stand as long as human beings remember what it means to love and to lose. The body of Mumtaz Mahal is temporarily interred in Burhanpur, in a garden that overlooks the Tapti River. It will rest there for 6 months while the emperor makes his plans and completes the military campaign he cannot abandon, even in grief. During those months, messengers ride between Burhanpur and Agra, between the court and the far corners of the empire, carrying letters that summon architects, engineers, stone carvers, and master craftsmen. The emperor wants the finest minds and the most skilled hands in the world. He wants expertise in mathematics and geometry, in the properties of stone and the mysteries of light. He wants men who can turn his vision into reality, who can make grief visible and beautiful, who can create something that will outlast time itself. By the time the emperor returns to Agra with the remains of his beloved empress, the planning has begun in earnest. The first decision is the site. There are several possibilities, but the one that calls to him is a plot of land on the banks of the Yamuna River, downstream from the Agra fort. It is currently occupied by the mansion of a Rajput nobleman, and that mansion must be acquired. The transaction is made. The nobleman is compensated generously, as befits his rank, and he moves to a new location. The land is cleared. Surveyors arrive with their instruments, their measuring chains and plumb lines, their knowledge of how to read the ground and determine where water flows and how soil will bear weight. The chief architect, the man who will transform the emperor's grief into geometric perfection, is Ustad Ahmad Lahari. He is a Persian, trained in the traditions of Islamic architecture that have flowered from Spain to Central Asia, but he has worked for years in India and understands the local conditions, the quality of local stone, the ways in which Indian aesthetics can be woven into Persian forms. He brings with him a team of specialists, men who understand structural engineering, who know how to calculate the stresses on a dome, how to transfer weight through arches and down into foundations, how to create spaces that seem to float despite being made of solid stone. There are also Indian architects involved, men trained in the Hindu temple building traditions, who bring their own knowledge of ornamentation and proportion. This will be a fusion project, like everything in Mughal culture, a bringing together of multiple traditions into something new. The design that emerges from these consultations is deceptively simple in its overall plan. A square platform, raised above the level of the river. At the center of that platform, a square building with chamfered corners, each corner marked by a slender minaret. At the center of the building, a great dome. Flanking the main structure, identical buildings on the east and west sides, one a mosque for prayer, one a guest house for pilgrims. All of this set within a walled garden that stretches back from the river toward a great gate. This is the essential geometry, the bones of the design. But within that simple framework lies complexity beyond imagining. A web of mathematical relationships and symbolic meanings that will take years to execute and centuries to fully understand. The dimensions are chosen with care. The platform is 300 feet on each side. The main structure is 186 feet on each side. The minarets rise to a height of 130 feet. The Great Dome, from the platform to its finial, reaches 173 feet into the air. These are not arbitrary numbers. They are ratios, proportions derived from geometric principles that Persian and Islamic architects have refined over centuries. The building is designed to be perfectly symmetrical on the north-south axis, so that the facade visible from the river is identical to the facade visible from the garden. On the east-west axis there is symmetry as well, with the mosque and guest house mirroring each other perfectly. Only the interior breaks this symmetry because the actual tombs of Mumtaz Mahal and eventually Shah Jahan himself are positioned slightly off-center to preserve the geometric purity of the exterior while accommodating the requirements of Islamic burial, which mandates that the body faces Mecca. The symbolism embedded in the design is layered and profound. The garden represents paradise. The Islamic vision of heaven as described in the Quran, a place of flowing water and shade, of fruit trees and birdsong, of peace after the struggles of earthly life. The fourfold division of the garden echoes the 4 rivers of paradise mentioned in Scripture. The white marble of the tomb itself represents purity, eternity, the unchanging nature of divine beauty. The dome is heaven's vault. The minarets are fingers pointing toward God. Every element has meaning, speaks to both the educated viewer who understands the references and the ordinary pilgrim who simply feels the power of the forms without being able to articulate why they move the soul. But before any of this can rise into visibility, there must be foundations, and in the silty soil beside a river prone to flooding, foundations are a monumental challenge. The solution involves digging down to bedrock, which in this location means excavating to a depth of 50 feet over the entire area of the platform. The excavated soil is replaced with stone and mortar, layer upon layer, creating a solid base that will not shift or settle even when the monsoon rains swell the river and the water table rises. This work alone takes nearly 2 years and employs thousands of laborers, men who dig and haul and mix mortar under the burning sun, who work through the brief cool season and then face the heat of summer again, who are paid wages that support their families but who will never see their names recorded in any chronicle or inscription. While the foundations are being laid, other work proceeds in parallel across the empire. In the Makrana quarries of Rajasthan, 300 miles to the southwest, stonecutters are opening new faces in the marble deposits that have supplied white stone for temples and palaces for generations. Makrana marble is prized for its fine grain and its ability to take a polish so perfect that the surface seems to glow from within. It is not snow white but has a subtle translucent quality, a warmth that will allow it to capture light and hold it, to change color with the time of day and the angle of the sun. Enormous blocks are cut from the living rock using techniques that have not changed in centuries. Lines of holes drilled along the intended break, wooden wedges hammered into those holes and then soaked with water so they swell and crack the stone along a clean plane. Each block is shaped roughly at the quarry to reduce the weight that must be transported, then loaded onto specially built wagons. The journey from Makrana to Agra is an epic in itself. Teams of 20 to 30 oxen are harnessed to each wagon. The roads must be maintained, and in some cases built new to handle the weight. River crossings require temporary bridges or ferries strong enough to bear loads of several tons. The journey takes weeks, moving at the pace of the slowest ox, camping at night in the open, vulnerable to bandits who must be driven off by armed guards traveling with each convoy. In the end, more than 1,000 of these massive blocks will make the journey, representing tens of thousands of tons of marble, enough to build a small mountain of stone. But marble is only the beginning. The decorative program the emperor envisions requires precious stones from across the known world. Lapis lazuli, that deep blue stone flecked with gold, comes from the mountains of Badakhshan in Afghanistan. Carried along the same trade routes that have supplied this treasure since before Alexander the Great marched through these lands. Jade comes from China, that lustrous green stone that can be carved into the thinnest leaves and flowers. Turquoise comes from Persia. Carnelian and jasper come from various sources, chosen for their particular shades of red and orange and brown. Onyx, coral, mother of pearl, agate, bloodstone, malachite. The list grows to include 43 different types of stone, each selected not just for its beauty, but for the precise shade it will contribute to the floral designs that will cover the marble surfaces. These stones do not arrive as finished inlays, they come as raw materials, chunks and slices, that must be worked by hand into the shapes required by the design. The technique is called pietra dura in Italian, though the Mughals knew it by other names, and it requires extraordinary skill and patience. A master craftsman receives a drawing, a full-scale pattern showing a spray of flowers, say, with each petal and leaf and stem outlined precisely. He must then cut stones to fit each element, grinding them on abrasive wheels to achieve the exact shape, polishing the surfaces until they gleam. The marble into which these stones will be set is carved away in shallow recesses, each one matching the shape of its corresponding stone piece. The stones are set with an adhesive so strong that they will remain in place for centuries. The surface is ground smooth so that the marble and the inlay become a single plane, seamless and perfect. A single floral spray might contain dozens of individual stone pieces. A panel might contain multiple sprays. The exterior of the Taj Mahal will eventually feature thousands upon thousands of these inlaid elements, a carpet of stone flowers that covers the walls, the dados, the spandrels of the arches, everywhere the eye might fall. The arrival of the marble blocks at the construction site creates its own logistical challenge. They must be lifted from the wagons and moved into position on the growing structure. For this, the builders construct massive ramps of earth and brick spiraling up around the platform and then around the emerging walls. These ramps are wide enough for elephants to climb because elephants are the hoisting engines of this project. A marble block is placed on a wheeled trolley, ropes are attached. Teams of elephants, sometimes a dozen or more for the heaviest pieces, lean into their harnesses and pull. Men guide the trolley, chanting in rhythm to coordinate the effort, ready to chock the wheels if a rope breaks or an elephant stumbles. It is dangerous work. Accidents happen. Ropes fray and snap, blocks slip and fall. Men are crushed or crippled. There are no modern safety regulations, no insurance schemes. The injured are carried away. The work continues. This is the price of beauty, the hidden cost of monuments paid in sweat and pain and sometimes in blood. As the structure rises, scaffolding is required. Not the metal frameworks of modern construction, but interlocking wooden poles lashed together with rope. A forest of timber that surrounds the marble walls and allows workers to reach every surface, to set stones, to carve details, to apply the inlay work that transforms raw marble into art. The wood for this scaffolding is itself a major expense. It must be strong and straight, resistant to rot and insects. It comes from forests across northern India, teak and sal and other hardwoods, floated down rivers and dragged overland to the construction site. Some estimates suggest that the scaffolding alone consumes as much timber as would be needed to build several large ships. And this scaffolding is not static. It must be adjusted as the work progresses, raised higher as the walls grow, modified to accommodate the curve of the dome, eventually removed entirely without leaving marks on the finished surfaces. The dome itself is a triumph of engineering. It is actually two domes, an inner and an outer, with a hollow space between them. This double shell construction serves multiple purposes. It allows the exterior dome to be taller and more visually dramatic while keeping the interior dome at a more human scale, preventing the interior space from feeling overwhelming. It also reduces the overall weight, because a hollow dome weighs less than a solid one, and weight is the enemy of structures that attempt to span large spaces without internal supports. The mathematics required to design such a dome, to calculate the thickness of the shells and the materials needed and the way forces will distribute through the structure, are sophisticated. These architects may not have modern engineering software, but they have centuries of accumulated knowledge, geometric principles tested in countless mosques and tombs, an intuitive understanding of how stone behaves under stress. And they have the confidence to attempt something unprecedented, to push the boundaries of what is possible, because they are working for an emperor who demands perfection and provides unlimited resources. 20,000 workers are employed at the height of construction, a number that represents a small city in itself. They come from across the Mughal Empire and beyond, drawn by wages that are generous by the standards of the day, by the prestige of working on an imperial project, by the simple need to feed their families. There are the general laborers, the men who dig and haul and mix mortar, whose labor is anonymous and essential. There are the skilled masons who lay marble blocks with precision, ensuring that each course is level and true, that the walls rise straight and the arches curve correctly. There are the stone carvers, artists with hammer and chisel, who transform flat surfaces into intricate relief work, who create the chalice, those pierced screens that filter light into patterns, who carve the floral borders and geometric designs that frame doorways and windows. Among the most honored are the calligraphers, the artists who inscribe passages from the Quran onto the marble surfaces in flowing Arabic script. The master calligrapher is Amanat Khan, one of the few individuals other than the architects whose name is actually recorded on the building itself. His signature appears in tiny letters on one of the entrance gates, a rare acknowledgement of an artist's contribution. The calligraphy he designs is not simply writing made large, it is an art form in itself. The letters shaped according to principles of proportion and balance that have been refined over centuries of Islamic culture. The script style chosen is thuluth, a graceful cursive that allows the letters to flow and interweave. But these letters will not be painted or carved in relief. They will be inlaid in black marble, each letter cut through the white marble surface, the black stone set into the void, creating a clarity and permanence that paint could never achieve. The verses chosen are not random. They are carefully selected passages that speak to themes of death, paradise, judgment and resurrection. Above the main entrance, visitors pass beneath verses that welcome the righteous soul to paradise. Inside the tomb chamber, passages remind the living that all earthly glory fades and that only God is eternal. But there is a subtlety in the calligraphy that most visitors never notice. The letters at the top of the arches are larger than the letters at the bottom. This is not carelessness. It is sophisticated optical correction. A viewer standing on the ground looking up at the arch would otherwise perceive the higher letters as smaller due to perspective. By making them physically larger, they appear to be the same size as the lower letters, creating visual harmony. This attention to how the human eye actually perceives forms, this understanding of psychology as well as geometry, is what separates great architecture from merely competent building. The pietra dura specialists, the men who create the stone inlay work, are among the most highly paid workers on the site. They are artists whose training begins in childhood, whose hands have learned through years of practice to judge the precise angle at which a cutting wheel must meet stone, the exact pressure needed to cleave carnelian or jade without shattering it, the patience required to grind and polish until a surface reflects light like still water. Their workshop is a treasure house of colored stones, bins and boxes of material sorted by type and shade, a palette of Earth's mineral wealth spread out before them. They work slowly, deliberately, each piece a small meditation on color and form. A master might complete only a few square inches of inlay in a day, but when that work is set into the marble, when it becomes part of a floral spray or a geometric pattern, it is perfect. It will not fade or crack or peel. It will remain exactly as the day it was set for as long as the marble itself endures. The flowers depicted in the inlay work are not generic. They are specific species rendered with botanical accuracy. There are tulips, introduced to Mughal India from Persia and prized for their elegant form. There are irises, poppies, lilies, narcissus. There are flowers that bloom in spring, and flowers that bloom in autumn, all depicted together in an eternal garden that knows no seasons. This profusion of floral imagery is itself deeply Islamic, reflecting the Quranic descriptions of paradise as a garden, but it also reflects Mughal aesthetic preferences. The court's love of gardens and flowers, the miniature paintings that show emperors and courtiers sitting in flowered meadows, the actual gardens where roses and jasmine are cultivated with devotion. The tomb becomes a garden in stone, a place where spring is forever, where beauty does not fade, where the beloved can rest in surroundings worthy of her memory. The water systems required for the gardens are themselves engineering projects of considerable sophistication. The Yamuna River flows past the site, but it flows at a level lower than the gardens. Water must be lifted. The solution is a series of wells and a complex of underground pipes made of ceramic and sealed with lime. Oxen turn wheels that raise water from the wells into a storage tank. From that tank, gravity carries water through the pipe network to feed the channels and fountains of the garden. The system is designed so that water is always moving, always fresh, never stagnant. This is not just aesthetic preference. Moving water is safer water in a climate where waterborne disease is a constant threat. The sound of water, its cool presence in the air, is a gift in a land where summer heat can be brutal, where dust storms sweep in from the deserts to the west, where shade and moisture are precious. The minarets that rise at the four corners of the platform serve both aesthetic and practical purposes. Aesthetically, they frame the tomb, their vertical lines balancing the horizontal mass of the platform and the curves of the dome. Practically, they are towers from which the call to prayer can be sounded, fulfilling the Islamic requirement that the faithful be summoned to worship 5 times daily. But there is another reason for their design. They are built with a slight outward tilt, leaning away from the tomb by a few degrees. This is earthquake engineering, Mughal style. If an earthquake were to topple a minaret, and earthquakes do occur in this region though not frequently, the slight outward lean would ensure the minaret falls away from the tomb rather than onto it. Every detail has been considered, every potential problem anticipated and addressed. This is architecture at its most comprehensive, where beauty and function merge completely. As the years pass and the structure grows, the emperor visits the site regularly. He comes in the cool of early morning or in the evening, when the worst heat has passed. He walks through the scaffolding enclosed spaces, climbs the ramps, inspects the work. He discusses details with the architects, questions the choices of materials and techniques, suggests modifications. He is not a passive patron who simply pays and walks away. He is an active participant in the design process, bringing his own considerable knowledge of architecture to bear on every decision. He has built other structures, palaces and mosques that stand throughout the empire, and he understands intimately how spaces work, how light moves through interiors, how proportions affect the emotional impact of a building. This tomb is the culmination of his architectural vision, the project into which he pours all his understanding of beauty and all his grief. The work continues through the scorching summer months when the heat makes marble too hot to touch with bare hands. When workers labor in the early morning and late afternoon and rest during the middle of the day under makeshift shelters. It continues through the monsoon season when rain turns the construction site into mud, when work slows but does not stop entirely, when stone cannot be carved outside but can be worked under cover, when foundations are tested by rising water and prove their soundness. It continues through the brief cool season when the air is dry and clear and work proceeds at maximum efficiency, when the marble gleams white against blue skies and the outline of the emerging structure becomes increasingly apparent. Years accumulate. Workers age. Some die and are replaced. Some learn their father's trades on this site. Apprentices become journeymen, become masters. The project has its own momentum now, its own culture, its own rhythms and routines. Accidents and injuries are inevitable in work of this scale. A worker falls from scaffolding and breaks his back. Another is struck by a falling block of marble and crushed. Some succumb to heat exhaustion or illness. The Mughal state, to its credit, provides some support for injured workers and the families of those who die, though by modern standards it is inadequate. The emperor himself orders that pensions be paid to the families of workers killed on the project. It is a recognition that these men are not slaves, not mere tools to be used and discarded, but individuals whose sacrifice is part of the cost of this monument. And yet, the work demands its price. Beauty does not come free. Every great building of history has been built on the backs of workers whose names are lost, whose contributions are uncelebrated except in the aggregate, in the acknowledgement that 20,000 people labored here for 22 years. The tomb chamber, the heart of the structure, is designed with particular care. This is where the body of Mumtaz Mahal will rest, where pilgrims will come to pray and pay their respects, where the emperor himself will eventually be interred beside his beloved. The room is octagonal, echoing the octagonal plan of the building's exterior. It is lit by pierced screens that allow light to enter but create privacy, that filter the harsh Indian sun into a soft glow that illuminates without glaring. The actual graves, the bodies themselves, are in a crypt below this chamber, following Islamic custom, which requires burial below ground. But in the chamber that visitors see, there are cenotaphs, memorial markers that represent the graves. These cenotaphs are themselves masterpieces of stone carving. Mumtaz Mahal's cenotaph is surrounded by a screen made of carved marble so delicate that light passes through it, a jali so fine that it seems impossible it could be stone rather than lace. This screen, which takes years to complete, becomes one of the most photographed and admired elements of the entire complex, a demonstration of what human hands guided by patience and skill can achieve. The ceiling of the tomb chamber is decorated with stucco work, carved plaster painted and gilded, creating patterns that echo the stone inlay of the lower walls, but in a medium that is lighter and allows for different effects. The acoustics of the chamber are remarkable. A voice raised in prayer or song resonates in a way that makes the space itself seem to participate in worship, the stone lending its weight to the sound, amplifying it, extending it, creating a sense that the building is alive, that it listens and responds. This acoustic effect is not accidental. It is designed, the product of calculations about the relationship between volume and surface area, about how sound waves reflect off curved versus flat surfaces, about the way certain geometries can create harmony or discord. By the year 1643, 12 years after Mumtaz Mahal's death, the main structure is complete. The dome is finished. The minarets rise to their full height. The marble surfaces are inlaid with their floral decorations. The calligraphy is in place. The surrounding buildings, the mosque and the guest house, are complete as well, their red sandstone providing a visual contrast to the white marble of the tomb. The garden is laid out, though the trees are still young. The water channels are functioning. The pools reflect the building as they were designed to do. The great gate, the entrance to the complex, stands complete, its own dome and minarets smaller echoes of the tomb itself, creating a relationship between the parts that unifies the whole composition. But the work is not finished. For another 10 years, craftsmen will continue to refine details, to add decorative elements to subsidiary buildings, to perfect the landscaping, to adjust and correct. Shah Jahan's perfectionism knows no bounds. If a detail displeases him, it is redone. If an element seems out of balance, it is modified. The budget, already staggering by any measure, continues to grow. Estimates of the total cost vary, but most historians place it at around 32 million rupees in the currency of that time, a sum that represents the total revenue of the empire for several years. In modern terms, attempting to calculate equivalent values across 4 centuries and vastly different economic systems, it is meaningless to assign a specific number. It is enough to say that this is a project that only an empire at its peak, with access to unlimited resources and labor, could contemplate, and that empire gives everything required. Marble, precious stones, skilled labor, time, all flow toward Agra, toward this building, toward the fulfillment of a promise made by a grieving emperor to his dead wife. The materials that compose the Taj Mahal tell a story of global trade and imperial power. The white marble from Makrana is the foundation, the canvas on which everything else is painted, but it is only the beginning. Consider the lapis lazuli, that deep blue stone that ancient peoples believed was a piece of the night sky fallen to earth. It comes from mines in Shah, in the mountains of what is now Afghanistan, where men descend into darkness to extract this treasure, where each piece must be carried on human backs or donkey carts down mountain paths to trading posts, then along the routes that connect Central Asia to India. This stone has traveled those routes for thousands of years, supplying the ultramarine pigment that illuminated medieval manuscripts, the deep blue glazes of Persian pottery, and now the flower petals inlaid in marble walls beside the Yamuna River. The jade arrives from China along the Silk Road, that network of routes connecting east and west that has existed since before the time of Christ. Some jade is pale green, almost white, translucent when thin. Some is the deep emerald that emperors prize above gold. It is harder than steel, difficult to work, requiring diamond-tipped tools or patience to carve with sand and water, gradually abrading the surface into desired shapes. In Chinese culture, jade represents virtue and purity, qualities appropriate for a memorial to an empress. The Mughal craftsmen may not share all the Chinese symbolic associations, but they recognize the stone's inherent beauty, its smooth coolness to the touch, the way light seems to glow from within it. Coral comes from the Red Sea and the Persian Gulf, harvested by divers who descend into blue water holding their breath, searching among the reef formations for branches of the right color and quality. Red coral has been prized since antiquity, used in jewelry and decoration, believed to have protective properties. Here it becomes the red centers of flowers, the small accents that draw the eye and create focal points within larger compositions. Mother of pearl, the iridescent inner layer of certain shells, comes from the same maritime sources, its surface shifting through colors as the viewing angle changes, adding another dimension of variation to the inlay work. The carnelian, in its many shades from pale orange to deep rust red, comes from various sources across western India and Arabia. It is a form of chalcedony, a quartz that takes an exceptionally fine polish and has been used in jewelry and decoration since the ancient world. The Mughals use it extensively in their inlay work because it provides warm tones that balance the cool blues and greens of other stones, because it is workable without being too soft, because its colors are stable and will not fade. Jasper, another quartz variety, provides earth tones, browns and tans and ochres. Bloodstone, a dark green jasper flecked with red, provides dramatic contrast. Malachite, with its distinctive green bands, comes from copper mines, bringing the color of new leaves and spring grass. Onyx in its various forms, from pure black to layered black and white, provides the darkest values in the palette. It is used for leaves and stems, for shadows in flower designs, for outlines that define forms. The contrast between white marble and black onyx is stark and dramatic, a statement of duality, of light and shadow, life and death, presence and absence. Turquoise, that sky-blue stone sacred to many cultures, comes from Persia, from mines that have supplied this gem for thousands of years. Its color is unstable, changing over time as it absorbs oils from skin or exposure to chemicals, but when freshly polished it is the color of desert sky at midday, intense and pure. The technique of pietra dura, though the Mughals did not call it by that Italian name, reached its highest expression in India with the Taj Mahal. The craftsmen who practiced this art were not simply following templates. They were making constant micro-decisions about color matching, about which piece of stone best represented a particular petal, about how to adjust the shape of a leaf to make it fit perfectly into its marble setting, while still looking natural and graceful. Each inlaid element required careful preparation of both the stone piece and the marble ground. The marble had to be carved away to the exact depth of the stone piece, no deeper, or it would sit below the surface, no shallower, or it would protrude. The edges had to match precisely, or gaps would show. The adhesive, a lime-based compound that would harden to become nearly as strong as the stone itself, had to be mixed correctly and applied in the right amount. The finished inlay work is so seamless that visitors often do not realize what they are looking at. They see flowers on marble walls and assume they are carved or painted. Only upon close examination does it become apparent that these are not carvings or paintings but mosaics of stone, that each petal is a separate piece, that the veins in the leaves are thin slivers of different colored stone, that what appears to be brush strokes are actually the boundaries between one stone and another. This illusion of seamlessness is the highest achievement of the craft. The technique is visible but not obtrusive. The work appears effortless, though it required immense effort. The effect is naturalistic, though the materials are stone. The calligraphy that adorns the Taj Mahal is equally sophisticated in its execution. The verses are from the Quran, chosen for their thematic relevance to death and paradise. They are rendered in black marble inlaid into white marble, the same pietra dura technique used for the floral designs but applied to letterforms instead of flowers. The script, as noted, is thuluth, one of the most beautiful of the Arabic calligraphic styles developed in the 10th century and perfected over the following centuries. It is characterized by its flowing curves and by the way letters are extended and elaborated, creating a rhythm of thick and thin strokes, of ascenders and descenders that give the text a lyrical quality even to viewers who cannot read Arabic. Amanat Khan, the master calligrapher, designs the inscriptions with the same attention to visual harmony that governs the floral designs. The size of the letters must be appropriate to their location and to the viewing distance. The spacing between letters and words must create visual balance. The verses must fit into the architectural frames provided for them without appearing cramped or stretched. In some locations, the calligraphy is arranged in panels. In others, it flows around arches or along friezes. The optical corrections, making the higher letters larger to compensate for perspective, demonstrate a sophisticated understanding of visual perception that is rare in any era. The verses themselves reward contemplation. Above the south entrance, the main entrance for visitors arriving from the direction of Agra, is a passage from Surah 89, Al-Fajr, the dawn. O soul at peace, return to your Lord well-pleased and well-pleasing. Enter among my servants, and enter my paradise. This is an invitation and a promise, a statement about what awaits the righteous after death. It speaks directly to the purpose of the building, which is not merely a tomb but a gateway, a threshold between earthly life and eternal paradise. Other verses throughout the complex return to themes of judgment, of the temporary nature of worldly glory, of the permanence of God, and the impermanence of all else. These are not cheerful messages, but they are appropriate ones, reminding visitors that they too will die, that all the wealth and power of the Mughal Empire cannot grant immortality, that death is the great equalizer. The marble screens, the chalice, represent another technical achievement. These are not perforated sheets but carved stone, each one made from a single piece of marble into which openings have been cut. The designs are geometric, based on Islamic patterns that have been developed over centuries. Patterns built from repeating units that can extend infinitely in any direction, patterns that reflect mathematical principles and cosmic order. To create these screens, a craftsman begins with a flat slab of marble. He draws or transfers the pattern onto the surface. Then, with drill and chisel and saw, he painstakingly removes the material that is not part of the design. A single screen might contain hundreds of openings, each one a specific shape, each one needing to connect to its neighbors in a way that preserves the structural integrity of the screen while creating the visual pattern. The most famous of these screens surrounds the cenotaph of Mumtaz Mahal in the central tomb chamber. It is octagonal, 8 feet high, and so delicate that light passes through it freely. The pattern is based on hexagons and 6-pointed stars, repeating and interlocking in a design of mesmerizing complexity. The marble is carved so thin in places that it is translucent, glowing when backlit. This screen took years to complete, and it represents the absolute pinnacle of the stone carver's art in India. There are stories, possibly apocryphal, that Shah Jahan ordered the hands of the craftsmen cut off after they completed this screen so that they could never create anything as beautiful for anyone else. These stories are almost certainly false, arising from a later romanticism about the monument and a misunderstanding of Mughal culture. But they persist because the screen is so extraordinary that it seems to require some explanation beyond mere skill, some sacrifice or tragedy commensurate with its beauty. The sound qualities of the tomb chamber, its acoustic properties, are the result of careful attention to geometry and materials. The octagonal space with its domed ceiling creates natural resonance. A voice raised in song or prayer is amplified and sustained, echoing for several seconds, each note blending into the next to create a harmonic effect. This is particularly striking when verses from the Quran are recited, the Arabic syllables resonating through the space, the marble itself seeming to participate in the devotion. The effect has been compared to the acoustics of great cathedrals and concert halls, those rare spaces where architecture and sound merge to create something greater than either alone. The reflecting pools in the garden are positioned precisely to mirror the tomb. When the water is still, the reflection is so perfect that it creates visual confusion, a doubling of the structure that makes it seem both more monumental and more ethereal, as if the building exists simultaneously in the physical world and in some ideal realm. This use of reflection is deliberate and sophisticated, part of the Persian garden tradition where water serves not only practical purposes but symbolic and aesthetic ones. Water is the source of life. Water cleanses. Water reflects heaven. In the garden of the Taj Mahal, the long pool that stretches from the main gate toward the tomb creates a visual axis, drawing the eye forward, promising that at the end of this path lies something precious and holy. The 4 minarets, each one identical, each one rising to 130 feet, are structural masterpieces in their own right. They are hollow, allowing for staircases inside that spiral up to the top platform where the muezzin would stand to call the faithful to prayer. The walls taper as they rise, thicker at the base for stability, thinner at the top to reduce weight. The surface is divided into segments by balconies, 3 per minaret, that break up the vertical line and provide visual interest. The slight outward tilt, leaning away from the tomb by about 2.5 degrees, is barely perceptible to the casual viewer but serves its important purpose of earthquake protection. These minarets are not merely decorative, they are functional elements of an Islamic religious complex, and they demonstrate the integration of form and function that characterizes great architecture. The gardens of the Taj Mahal extend from the Great Gate to the marble platform, a distance of 300 meters, creating an approach that is both physical and spiritual, a journey from the mundane world outside toward the sacred space of the tomb. The design follows the Charbagh principle, the fourfold garden that represents the Islamic vision of paradise as described in the Quran. 4 rivers are said to flow through paradise, rivers of water, milk, wine, and honey, and the garden replicates this division with 4 channels that intersect at a central raised pool. The water in these channels flows from the central pool toward the 4 cardinal directions, a reversal of the usual pattern where water flows inward toward a center, and this reversal is significant. It suggests that paradise is not something we reach, but something that radiates outward, that grace flows from the center toward the margins, that the tomb itself is a source of blessing. The central pool is larger than the others, raised on a marble platform, and originally contained a fountain. The reflection of the tomb in this pool becomes one of the defining images of the Taj Mahal, reproduced in countless photographs and paintings. But the original design included more than just this visual effect. The pool served as a mirror for observing the moon and stars, creating a connection between the earthly garden and the heavens above. Visitors might gather in the cool evening hours, sitting on the marble edging of the pool, watching the moon rise and its light paint the white marble of the tomb silver, seeing that silver image doubled in the water below. This was contemplation space, meditation space, a place designed to encourage thoughts of eternity and divine beauty. The walkways that divide the garden are paved with red sandstone, providing color contrast to the green of the lawns and the white of the marble structures. These walkways are raised slightly above the level of the planted areas, ensuring that they remain usable even during the monsoon season, when the gardens might be muddy. Along the walkways are planted trees, chosen for their shade and their aesthetic qualities. Cypress trees, with their tall vertical forms, echo the minarets and create a rhythm of dark verticals against the sky. Fruit trees, apricot and cherry and others, provide seasonal blossoms and edible harvests, a reminder that paradise is not merely beautiful but also sustains life. The Mughals inherited from their Persian ancestors a deep love of gardens, and every major city of the empire had royal gardens where the court could escape the confinements of palace walls, where poetry might be recited under flowering trees and music performed beside flowing water. The flowers planted in the Taj Mahal gardens change with the seasons, ensuring that there is always color and fragrance. Roses, the queen of flowers in Persian and Mughal aesthetics, bloom in spring, their scent carried on the warming air. Jasmine, valued for its intense perfume, is trained on trellises and along walls. Marigolds, hardy and bright, provide color in the autumn. Lotus flowers grow in the pools, their large leaves floating on the surface, their pink and white blossoms rising above the water on straight stems, symbols of purity rising from mud, a common metaphor in both Hindu and Buddhist thought, and one that the syncretic Mughal culture could appreciate. The gardens are maintained by a staff of gardeners whose work is continuous and seasonal, pruning and planting and watering and weeding, ensuring that the vision of paradise remains vivid and real. The water system that feeds these gardens is hidden but essential. The Yamuna River flows past the site at a level lower than the gardens, so the water must be lifted. Wells are dug to tap into the groundwater table. Oxen or camels walk in circles, turning wheels that raise water from the wells into storage tanks elevated above the level of the gardens. From these tanks, water flows by gravity through a network of underground ceramic pipes to feed the pools and channels and fountains. The system is designed with redundancy, multiple wells and multiple tanks, ensuring that even if one part fails, water continues to flow. The pipes are laid below the frost line, though in Agra the winters are mild enough that freezing is rarely a concern. The joints between pipe sections are sealed with lime mortar, preventing leaks and ensuring that the water travels where intended rather than seeping away into the ground. The sound of water is ever present in the gardens, a gentle background music that masks other sounds and creates an atmosphere of peace. The channels have carved sandstone edges, and the water flowing over these edges creates a soft splashing white noise that soothes the mind. The fountains, when they are operating, add their own voice, the sound changing with the water pressure, sometimes a gentle burble, sometimes a stronger rush. This acoustic design is as intentional as the visual design, creating a multi-sensory experience that engages not just sight but hearing, smell, touch, and even taste. For visitors might drink from the channels or from cups dipped into the pools, the water cold and clean, a gift in a hot climate. The Great Gate that serves as the entrance to the complex is itself a substantial structure, as large as many standalone buildings of its era. It is built of red sandstone inlaid with white marble, a color reversal of the tomb itself, preparing the visitor for what is to come. The archway rises to 30 meters, a vast opening that frames the tomb in the distance when one stands at the threshold looking inward. The ceiling of the archway is decorated with stucco work painted and gilded, and there is calligraphy here as well, more verses from the Quran welcoming the believer to paradise. The passageway through the gate is designed to create suspense. As you enter from the outside, you see only darkness, the interior shadowed after the bright sunlight of the street. You walk forward, your eyes adjusting, and then suddenly you emerge into light again, and there before you is the full view of the tomb, white marble blazing in the sun, framed by the green of the gardens and the blue of the sky. It is a moment of revelation, carefully orchestrated, that has moved visitors for centuries. The approach to the tomb from the gate is gradual. You do not rush toward it. You walk along the central pathway beside the water channels, perhaps pausing at the central pool to look at the reflection, proceeding at a meditative pace that allows anticipation to build. As you get closer, details emerge that were not visible from the gate. The floral inlay work becomes clear, The calligraphy resolves into readable words. The proportions of the building, which from a distance seemed simple and unified, reveal complexity. The way the arches and alcoves create depth and shadow. The way the surface is not flat but richly textured. And always there is the play of light, changing with the time of day and the season. Morning light that is golden and direct, afternoon light that is harsh and creates strong shadows, evening light that is soft and makes the marble glow as if lit from within. At the platform level, which is elevated 5 meters above the garden, you must remove your shoes or wear protective coverings, a sign of respect for the sacred nature of the space. The marble underfoot is cool and smooth, polished by centuries of footsteps. You approach the central entrance, passing through an archway that is itself a masterpiece, decorated with more calligraphy and inlay work. The transition from the brightness outside to the dimness inside is striking. Your eyes adjust slowly. The tomb chamber reveals itself gradually, as if the building is deciding whether you are worthy to witness its interior beauty. And then you see the cenotaphs, surrounded by their screen of carved marble so fine it seems impossible, and you understand that every description you have heard or read is inadequate. Some things must be experienced directly. Some beauty defies language. The Taj Mahal is officially completed in the year 1653, 22 years after Mumtaz Mahal's death, though work on minor details and garden improvements continues beyond that date. Shah Jahan, now in his 60s, finally sees the fulfillment of his promise. The tomb stands as he envisioned it, white marble transformed into poetry, a monument that speaks of love and loss in a language that transcends words. He visits often, crossing the river from the Agra fort, where he holds court, arriving sometimes in the morning when the tomb glows in the rising sun, sometimes in the evening when it takes on softer tones, sometimes at night when the moon transforms it into something otherworldly, a structure that seems to belong more to heaven than to earth. These visits are not public ceremonies but private moments of grief and remembrance. He sits beside the cenotaph of his beloved wife, perhaps reading verses from the Quran, perhaps simply sitting in silence, lost in memories of 19 years together, of conversations and journeys and the shared intimacies of a marriage that was genuinely happy. He is surrounded by his architectural achievement, by the most beautiful building he will ever create, and yet the beauty cannot undo the absence it was built to honor. The tomb is both consolation and reminder, both a gift to the dead and a prison for the living, binding him to his grief even as it gives that grief form and meaning. The cost of the Taj Mahal, both financial and human, is staggering. The treasury of the Mughal Empire, though vast, is not infinite, and 22 years of construction at maximum scale have drained resources that might have been used elsewhere. The common people, whose taxes fund the project, see their emperor spending fortunes on a memorial to his wife, while they struggle with the daily difficulties of agricultural life in a land where drought and flood are equally common, where bandits prey on travelers, where disease sweeps through villages with regularity. There is grumbling resentment that is carefully not voiced where it might be heard and punished. The nobles, whose own palaces and tombs will never approach this grandeur, feel a mixture of admiration and envy, and the workers who built it, who spent years or even decades on the site, who sacrificed their health and in some cases their lives, receive their wages and their pensions if injured, but they do not receive glory. Their names are not inscribed on the walls. They are anonymous, forgotten. The hands that carved the stone and mixed the mortar and hauled the blocks into place. Shah Jahan in his later years becomes increasingly absorbed in architectural projects. He builds extensively in Delhi, creating an entire new city, Shah Jahanabad, with its massive red fort and its Jama Masjid, one of the largest mosques in India. He builds palaces and gardens in Kashmir and Lahore. But none of these projects have the emotional weight of the Taj Mahal. None of them are built from grief. They are expressions of power and taste, demonstrations of imperial magnificence, but they are not love letters written in stone. The Taj Mahal remains unique, the one building where personal emotion and imperial resources combine to create something that transcends both. But the empire that made such construction possible is beginning to show cracks. The Mughal system of governance, for all its sophistication, contains inherent instabilities. The succession is never secure. When an emperor dies, his sons typically go to war with each other, and the winner takes the throne while the losers are executed or imprisoned. Shah Jahan has 4 sons, each ambitious, each capable, each gathering supporters and planning for the inevitable struggle that will follow their father's death. The emperor tries to maintain balance between them, giving each important positions and responsibilities, trying not to favor one over another too obviously, but everyone knows that eventually there will be war. The question is not if but when. The when arrives sooner than expected. In the autumn of 1657, Shah Jahan falls seriously ill. For weeks he is incapacitated, barely conscious, and rumors spread that he is dying. His sons, taking this as the signal to begin the succession struggle, mobilize their forces, and prepare for war. The third son, Aurangzeb, proves to be the most ruthless and strategic. He defeats his brothers in a series of battles, captures them one by one, and has them executed. Then he marches on Agra, and confronts his father, who has by this point recovered from his illness, but has lost his empire. Aurangzeb does not kill his father. That would be too obviously brutal, too likely to cause outrage. Instead, he places him under house arrest in the Agra fort, in comfortable apartments with servants and every luxury except freedom. Shah Jahan will spend the last 8 years of his life as a prisoner of his own son, able to see the Taj Mahal across the river, but unable to visit it. Imagine those years. You are an emperor who once commanded the wealth of a continent, who built monuments that will last for millennia, who never heard the word no from any courtier or minister or general. And now you are confined to a few rooms, your movements restricted, your visitors limited, your power gone. You have done nothing wrong except grow old and vulnerable. Your son rules in your place, and while he is a capable ruler, austere and pious and militarily successful, he reverses many of your policies. He is more orthodox in his Islam, less tolerant of Hindu practices and temples, more focused on expanding the empire through conquest than on patronizing arts and architecture. The cultural flowering of your reign, the synthesis of Persian and Indian aesthetics, the cosmopolitan openness that characterized your court, these are ending. A harder, colder wind is blowing through the empire. You spend your days looking across the Yamuna at the white dome that holds the remains of your beloved wife. You can see it from your windows, from the balcony where you used to appear to your subjects. It changes with the light, pink at dawn, blazing white at noon, soft gray in the evening, silver under the moon. You have the leisure now to observe it at all hours, to watch the seasons change around it, the river rising and falling, the gardens growing lush in the monsoon and brown in the dry season. You have time to remember, and memory is all you have left. You remember her voice, her laugh, the way she moved through rooms, the counsel she gave you, the children she bore, the 19 years when you were not complete without her. And you remember the promise you made in Burhanpur as she died, the promise to build something beautiful. You kept that promise. Whatever else has failed, whatever disappointments and betrayals have marked your final years, you kept that promise. The tomb stands. The monument endures. And when you die, you will be buried there beside her, reunited at last, 2 cenotaphs side by side in the chamber you designed for eternity. Shah Jahan dies on the 22nd of January, 1666. In the 7th year of his imprisonment, he is 74 years old. His body is taken across the river and interred in the Taj Mahal beside Mumtaz Mahal, as he wished. But there is a problem. The tomb was designed for a single occupant, for perfect symmetry, for the cenotaph of Mumtaz Mahal to be centered under the dome. Adding a second cenotaph disrupts this symmetry. The architects and craftsmen, working under the direction of Aurangzeb, do their best. They place Shah Jahan's cenotaph beside his wife's, slightly off-center, trying to maintain visual balance. But the perfect geometric purity of the design is compromised. Some historians see this as symbolic, a reminder that even the most carefully planned visions can be altered by reality, that life intrudes on art, that death does not respect symmetry. Others see it as a final tragedy, that even in death Shah Jahan could not achieve the perfect union he sought, that his presence beside his wife mars the monument he created for her. Aurangzeb, the son who imprisoned his father, reigns for 49 years, expanding the Mughal Empire to its greatest territorial extent, but also sowing the seeds of its decline. He is a zealous Muslim, who alienates many of his Hindu subjects through policies that favor Islam and discriminate against other faiths. He spends years campaigning in the Deccan, trying to subdue kingdoms that resist Mughal rule, draining the treasury and exhausting the army. He has no interest in architecture or the arts. He builds a few mosques, functional structures without ornamentation, but he does not create monuments. When he dies in 1707, the empire he leaves behind is vast but fragile, overextended, riven by internal dissent, vulnerable to the forces that will soon tear it apart. The Taj Mahal endures through the long, slow decline of the Mughal Empire. It requires maintenance, repairs to the marble surfaces damaged by weather and pollution, cleaning of the inlay work, tending of the gardens. But it receives this care because it is too important to neglect. Pilgrims come to pray at the tomb. Travelers come to marvel at the architecture. The monument becomes legendary, its fame spreading across India and beyond. Travelers from Persia and Central Asia include it in their accounts of India's wonders. European traders and diplomats, increasingly present in India as the 18th century progresses, write home about the extraordinary tomb beside the Yamuna. The Taj Mahal begins its transformation from a tomb, a religious and memorial structure, into a symbol, an icon of beauty and love that transcends its original context and becomes universal. The 18th century is brutal for the Mughal Empire. The strong centralized state built by Akbar and maintained by Jahangir and Shah Jahan fragments as regional governors become effectively independent rulers. The Persian Emperor Nadir Shah invades in 1739 and sacks Delhi, carrying away the Peacock Throne and so much treasure that the Mughal treasury never recovers. Afghan raiders sweep through northern India, pillaging and destroying. The Marathas, Hindu warriors from the Deccan, carve out their own kingdom and threaten Mughal heartlands. The empire that once commanded the wealth of a subcontinent becomes a hollow shell, with emperors who rule in name only, their actual authority limited to the walls of their palaces. The Taj Mahal, surprisingly, survives this chaos relatively unscathed. It is too famous, too sacred, too beautiful for even the most hardened raiders to destroy. The Jat rulers of Bharatpur, who briefly occupy Agra in the mid-18th century, consider dismantling the tomb to sell the marble, but they abandon the plan either from religious scruple or practical difficulty. The building is simply too well made, its blocks too massive, its components too interlocked to be easily taken apart. Some minor theft occurs. Precious stones are pried from the inlay work by opportunists. The garden deteriorates as maintenance lapses, but the core structure remains intact, a testament to the quality of its construction and to the reverence it inspires even in turbulent times. The British arrival in India as colonial power brings new threats and new forms of preservation. In the late 18th and early 19th centuries, British officers and officials begin to visit the Taj Mahal, including it in their tours of India, writing descriptions that introduce it to European audiences. Some of these early visitors are respectful and amazed, others are less so. There are accounts of British soldiers using the tomb chamber for parties, of picnics held on the marble platform, of casual vandalism and theft. The garden is neglected, the fountains dry, the pools filled with stagnant water. The British authorities in Agra initially show little interest in maintaining what they see as a relic of a conquered people. This changes in the late 19th century, particularly under Lord Curzon, who serves as Viceroy of India from 1899 to 1905. Curzon is a complicated figure, an imperialist who believes in Britain's right to rule India but also a genuine admirer of Indian culture and architecture. When he visits the Taj Mahal and sees its deteriorated condition, he is appalled. He launches a comprehensive restoration project, the first systematic effort to preserve the monument since the Mughal period. The gardens are replanted according to what historians believe was the original plan. The water systems are repaired, and the fountains made functional again. The marble surfaces are cleaned. The inlay work is repaired where stones have been stolen, using matching materials and traditional techniques. A lamp of Egyptian design is installed in the tomb chamber, hanging on a long chain from the dome, providing light for visitors and creating dramatic shadows on the walls. Curzon's work, whatever his motivations, saves the Taj Mahal from continued decline. His restoration establishes the principle that this building is not just an artifact of a defeated empire but a treasure of humanity, worthy of care and protection regardless of who rules India. This principle will be tested in the 20th century as India moves through World War I, the struggle for independence, the partition that creates Pakistan, and the challenges of modern nationhood. But the monument survives all of it, becoming if anything more important as a symbol of Indian cultural achievement and as a reminder of a past when the subcontinent was unified under Mughal rule. During World War II, the British authorities feared that Japanese bombers might target the Taj Mahal as a symbol of imperial prestige or simply as a landmark for navigation. Elaborate precautions are taken. The dome is covered with a framework of bamboo and tarpaulin designed to disguise its shape from the air. The entire structure is surrounded by scaffolding and camouflage netting. These measures are never tested by actual air raids, but they demonstrate the value placed on preserving the monument even in wartime. When the war ends and the camouflage is removed, the Taj Mahal re-emerges into daylight, its marble cleaned by years of rain, its form unchanged by the tumult of global conflict. Independence comes to India in 1947, accompanied by the partition that creates Pakistan and unleashes communal violence that kills hundreds of thousands and displaces millions. The Taj Mahal, located in India but built by Muslim rulers and housing Islamic graves, becomes a symbol contested by different narratives. Some Hindu nationalists argue that the site was originally a Hindu temple, a claim not supported by historical evidence but persistent nonetheless. Muslim voices claim the monument as part of Islamic heritage. The Indian government, secular in its founding principles, asserts that the Taj Mahal belongs to all Indians regardless of religion, that it is a national treasure representing the best of Indian civilization, the synthesis of Persian, Islamic, and Indian elements that characterized the Mughal period. This debate continues into the present, flaring up whenever political tensions rise between Hindu and Muslim communities in India. But the monument itself remains above the fray, beautiful and impassive, neither Hindu nor Muslim in its appeal but simply human, speaking to universal emotions of love and loss that transcend religious boundaries. It attracts millions of visitors annually, both Indian and international, making it one of the most visited sites in the world and a major source of tourism revenue for India. This creates new problems. The sheer number of visitors threatens the structure through wear and tear on the marble floors, through the carbon dioxide exhaled by millions of lungs in the enclosed tomb chamber, through the oils from millions of hands touching the marble screens and inlaid stones. Modern conservation efforts focus on managing these threats. Access to the tomb chamber is limited. Visitors must wear cloth coverings over their shoes to protect the marble. Time limits are imposed during peak visiting hours to prevent overcrowding. The surrounding area is regulated to reduce air pollution, with factories and vehicles restricted or banned within a certain radius of the monument. The Yamuna River, which was once clear enough to reflect the tomb but has become heavily polluted in recent decades, is the subject of cleanup campaigns that have had mixed success. The struggle to preserve the Taj Mahal in the face of modern environmental and human pressures is ongoing, requiring constant vigilance and adaptation of conservation techniques. The monument has been recognized by UNESCO as a World Heritage Site since 1983, a designation that brings international attention and theoretically support for conservation efforts. It has been surveyed with modern technology, laser scanned to create precise digital models, studied by engineers and architects and art historians seeking to understand exactly how it was built and how to keep it standing for future centuries. The consensus among experts is that the structure itself is sound, that the Mughal builders did their work so well that the fundamental integrity of the building is not in question. The threats are surface level: damage to the marble from acid rain, discoloration from particulate pollution, wear from visitors, theft of inlay stones by vandals. These are manageable problems given sufficient resources and will. The Taj Mahal in the 21st century exists in multiple contexts simultaneously. It is still a tomb, still a place where people come to honor the dead and contemplate mortality. It is a tourist attraction, a must-see destination that appears on every list of the world's most beautiful buildings. It is a symbol of India, appearing on currency and postage stamps, used in advertising and diplomacy to represent Indian culture to the world. It is an architectural masterpiece studied by students and professionals seeking to understand how form, material, mathematics, and emotion can combine to create something that touches the human spirit. It is a challenge to conservators working to preserve it against time and pollution and the simple entropy that affects all physical things. And it is a reminder of what humans can achieve when grief and love and resources and skill align, when an emperor's promise to a dead wife becomes a gift to all future generations. To visit the Taj Mahal today is to participate in a carefully orchestrated experience that begins long before you see the tomb itself. You arrive in Agra, a city of more than 1.5 million people, located on the Yamuna River in the northern Indian state of Uttar Pradesh. The city is hot and crowded, thick with traffic and the sounds of commerce, very much a modern Indian urban center. But it still carries traces of its Mughal past, the Red Fort looming on the riverbank, old neighborhoods with narrow lanes and buildings whose architecture speaks to earlier centuries. The Taj Mahal is about 2 kilometers from the fort, set in its walled garden enclosure, separated from the surrounding city by space and intention. You approach from the west, through a series of outer courtyards and security checkpoints. The Indian government takes the protection of the monument seriously. Bags are searched. Certain items are prohibited. Large bags, tripods, drones, anything that might be used to damage or mark the marble, anything that could be a weapon or a tool of vandalism, all must be left behind. You may bring a small camera, a water bottle, your tickets and identification. The restrictions are a reminder that this is no longer simply a tomb, if it ever was. It is a national treasure, a World Heritage Site. A place where the usual freedoms of public space are curtailed in service of preservation. Once through security, you enter the first courtyard, the forecourt or Jilokana, a large open space bordered by red sandstone walls. This area would have been bustling in Mughal times with the people who supported the tomb complex: guards and caretakers, sweepers and lamplighters, gardeners and fountain tenders, the small army of workers needed to maintain a structure of this scale. Today it is mostly empty, serving mainly to separate the modern world from the sacred precinct beyond. You cross this space, perhaps buying a bottle of water from a vendor or hiring a guide who will explain the history and architecture in whatever language you need. The heat, if you visit in summer, is formidable. The temperature can reach 45 degrees Celsius, over 110 Fahrenheit, and the sun is merciless. The cool of morning or evening is vastly preferable, not just for comfort but for the quality of light. You reach the Great Gate, the Darwaza, and here the experience transforms. The gate is substantial, large enough to be a building in its own right, built of red sandstone, inlaid with white marble. The color scheme a deliberate inversion of the tomb that awaits beyond. The archway is vast, designed not just to admit people, but to frame the view, to create anticipation. As you step into the shadowed passageway, you cannot yet see through to the other side. The interior is dim after the bright sunlight. Your eyes adjust slowly. You notice the decorated ceiling, the calligraphy on the walls, the play of light through the jali screens on either side. And then you move forward, and suddenly you emerge into full light again. And there it is. The first sight of the Taj Mahal stops you. You have seen photographs, surely, hundreds of images in books and magazines and websites. You think you know what to expect. But the photographs are lies. Not intentionally, but inevitably, because they cannot convey scale or luminosity, or the way three-dimensional space creates relationships that no camera can capture. The tomb stands at the far end of the garden, perfectly centered on the axis that runs from the gate to the platform. The white marble blazes in the sun, so bright it almost hurts to look directly at it. The dome rises against the blue sky, the minarets flank it symmetrically. The reflecting pool in the foreground mirrors the entire composition. It is exactly as you imagined and completely different, more substantial, more delicate, more present than any image suggested. You begin the walk down the central pathway. The garden stretches on either side, green lawns and flowering plants, the water channels running straight and clean, everything maintained with care. Other visitors share the path with you. Tourists from every corner of the world, Indians on pilgrimage or holiday, tour groups following guides who carry flags or umbrellas for visibility. The sound is a low murmur of voices in multiple languages, the click of cameras, the occasional laugh or exclamation. The atmosphere is reverent but not solemn, celebratory but not frivolous. People understand they are in a special place, but they are not intimidated by it. The Taj Mahal welcomes visitors. It was built to be seen, to be admired, to move the hearts of those who see it. As you walk closer, details emerge. The floral inlay work becomes visible, sprays of carnelian flowers and jade leaves scattered across the white marble surface. The calligraphy above the arches resolves from black lines into readable script, assuming you read Arabic. The proportions of the building, which seemed simple from a distance, reveal themselves as complex and sophisticated. The facade is not flat but deeply articulated with awans, those recessed archways that are a feature of Islamic architecture, creating layers of shadow and depth. The corner chamfers, where the square plan transitions into the octagonal base of the dome, are not abrupt but graceful, each one containing its own smaller awans and decorative elements. You reach the platform, ascending the steps that raise you 5 meters above the garden level. You remove your shoes or accept the cloth coverings that protect the marble from the oils and acids of bare feet. The marble underfoot is cool despite the heat, smooth and slightly slippery, polished by centuries of footsteps. You stand before the central Iwan, the main entrance on the south face, and look up at the arch that rises 17 meters above you. The scale is impressive but not overwhelming. The proportions keep it human, relatable. This is not architecture that seeks to dwarf and intimidate the visitor, as some European cathedrals do. This is architecture that seeks to elevate and inspire, to lift the spirit toward contemplation of beauty and eternity. You enter the tomb chamber, passing from sunlight into filtered light. The transition is dramatic. Outside, everything is bright and defined. Inside, everything is soft and mysterious. The light comes through the jali screens, those pierced marble lattices that cover the windows, and it comes through the inner surface of the double dome far above, where small openings allow sunlight to filter down. The effect is ethereal, as if the light itself is diffused through layers of silk, as if you have entered not a building but a dream. Your eyes adjust slowly, and the interior reveals itself. The chamber is octagonal, about 15 meters across. The walls rise to meet the inner dome, which is lower than the exterior dome, creating a space that is intimate rather than vast. The surfaces are decorated with more inlay work, more calligraphy, the themes of flowers and verses continuing from the exterior, and at the center, surrounded by the famous carved screen, are the cenotaphs. The screen is 8 feet high, octagonal like the room itself, made from a single composition of carved marble so intricate it seems impossible. You approach as close as the barriers allow, which is perhaps 2 meters from the screen, close enough to see the detail but not close enough to touch. The pattern is based on hexagons and 6-pointed stars, Islamic geometry rendered in stone, the negative space between the design elements creating its own secondary pattern. The marble is carved so thin in places that it is translucent, glowing when backlit by the light from the jali windows behind it. This screen took years to complete, and it represents the absolute pinnacle of the stone carver's art. No photograph can prepare you for its delicacy, for the sense that what you are seeing should not be possible, that stone should not be able to become lace. Behind the screen are the cenotaphs, the memorial markers that represent the graves. Mumtaz Mahal's cenotaph is centered, exactly under the apex of the dome. It is covered with more floral inlay work, cascades of flowers in precious stone, and her name and titles are inscribed in calligraphy. Beside her, slightly off-center, is Shah Jahan's cenotaph, added after his death, larger than hers, because men's cenotaphs are traditionally larger in Islamic culture. The asymmetry troubles the geometric purity of the design, but it also speaks to human reality intruding on ideal plans, to the fact that Shah Jahan's presence here was not part of the original vision, but became necessary. His desire to rest beside his wife overriding the requirements of perfect symmetry. The acoustic properties of the chamber become apparent when someone speaks or sings. A voice raised even moderately resonates, echoing for several seconds, the sound waves bouncing off the curved surfaces of the dome and the octagonal walls creating harmonics that blend and sustain. When a guide chants a verse from the Quran which is permitted and encouraged, the effect is profound. The chamber seems to respond, to participate in the devotion, the marble itself vibrating with the sound. This acoustic design is not accidental. It was calculated, the product of understanding how sound behaves in enclosed spaces, how to create an environment where prayer and recitation are amplified and beautified by architecture. You might spend 10 minutes in the tomb chamber, or 30, depending on the crowds and your own inclinations. Then you emerge back into sunlight, blinking at the brightness, the heat striking you again after the cool interior. You walk around the platform, viewing the tomb from different angles. From the north side, facing the river, the view is less formal but in some ways more beautiful. The Yamuna flows below, sometimes high and sometimes low depending on the season. The opposite bank is less developed, giving a sense of how the tomb might have looked in Mughal times, standing beside the river with open land beyond. From the corners of the platform, you can see the symmetry of the complex, the way the mosque and guest house mirror each other, the way the minarets mark the four corners of the platform, the way every element relates to every other in a carefully calculated composition. If you visit at dawn, you see the marble take on pink and gold tones as the sun rises, the building seeming to wake with the day. If you visit at sunset, you see it turn amber and then grey as the light fails, the white marble holding the last light of day even after the sky has darkened. If you visit at night under a full moon, which requires special permission and is only allowed a few days each month, you see the tomb transformed into something otherworldly, silver-white against the black sky, glowing as if lit from within. The experience so moving that many visitors describe it as spiritual, as transcendent, regardless of their religious beliefs or lack thereof. The legacy of the Taj Mahal extends far beyond its physical presence beside the Yamuna River. It has become one of the most recognizable structures in the world, a symbol that transcends its origins as a Mughal tomb to become something universal, an icon of beauty, of love, of human achievement in the face of loss. It appears in contexts that would astonish Shah Jahan, used to sell everything from tourism packages to tea. Its image reproduced millions of times in photographs and paintings and films and advertisements. This ubiquity has made it both more famous and in some ways less visible, so familiar that we see it without seeing it, recognizing the shape without contemplating what it represents. But for those who approach it with attention and openness, the Taj Mahal retains its power to move and inspire. It speaks to something fundamental in the human experience, the desire to create beauty as a response to death, the need to make permanent what is transient, to find meaning in loss. Shah Jahan's grief was personal, specific to his relationship with Mumtaz Mahal, but grief itself is universal. Everyone has lost someone they loved, or will lose someone they love. Everyone knows or will know the hollow feeling of absence, the sense that the world is diminished by the departure of a particular soul. The Taj Mahal gives form to that feeling, makes it visible and tangible, transforms it into something that, while it cannot eliminate pain, can at least dignify it, can make it beautiful. The architectural influence of the Taj Mahal has been profound and persistent. It inspired countless imitations and variations throughout the Islamic world and beyond. Mughal nobles and later rulers built tombs and palaces that echo its forms, though none achieved its perfection. British colonial administrators, despite their often dismissive attitudes toward Indian culture, could not help but be impressed by the monument, and elements of its design appear in British imperial architecture in India, and even back in Britain itself. The white marble and dome combination, the use of reflecting pools to create symmetry, the integration of gardens and built structures, all became standard features in monumental architecture for the next 2 centuries. In modern India, the Taj Mahal occupies a complex position in national identity. It is simultaneously a symbol of India's rich cultural heritage and a reminder of the Muslim rule that preceded British colonialism and the modern democratic state. Efforts to claim it exclusively for Hindu or Muslim narratives fail because the building itself embodies synthesis, the bringing together of Persian, Central Asian, and Indian elements into something that belongs to all of them and to none of them exclusively. It is Indian in the way that India itself is diverse and syncretic, a product of multiple influences that cannot be untangled without destroying what makes it distinctive. The economic impact of the Taj Mahal on Agra and on India as a whole is substantial. Tourism generates revenue directly through entrance fees and indirectly through hotels, restaurants, guide services, transportation, and the sale of handicrafts and souvenirs. Millions of people visit each year, and while this creates conservation challenges, it also creates economic opportunity for a region that otherwise has few sources of prosperity. The craftsmen who maintain the monument, who repair the inlay work and clean the marble, are heirs to the traditions established by their ancestors in the 17th century. The skills of pietra dura, of marble carving, of garden design, all survive because the Taj Mahal requires them, because there is work for people who possess these specialized abilities. The Taj Mahal has appeared in countless works of art and literature, serving as setting and symbol and inspiration. Poets have written about it in every language. Painters have attempted to capture its beauty, from the precise architectural renderings of British surveyors to the impressionistic visions of modern artists who see it through the lens of personal experience. Photographers have made it their subject, chasing the perfect light, the ideal angle, the moment when everything aligns. Filmmakers have used it as location and metaphor, its image appearing in movies from Bollywood spectaculars to international productions. Writers have set novels and stories in its shadow, using it as a backdrop for tales of romance, mystery, and adventure. But perhaps the most significant legacy of the Taj Mahal is the way it challenges our assumptions about permanence and meaning. We live in a world of rapid change where buildings are often designed to last decades rather than centuries, where the newest and most modern is valued over the old and traditional. The Taj Mahal stands as a counter-argument to that mindset. It was built to endure, and it has endured, outlasting the empire that created it, surviving wars and invasions and the transition from one form of rule to another. It endures because it was made with extraordinary care from materials chosen for their permanence, because its builders understood that truly important work requires time and patience, and an acceptance that the creator might not live to see the completion. The monument also challenges our separation of the aesthetic and the emotional, the beautiful and the meaningful. In much modern architecture, form follows function, and emotional expression is seen as secondary to practical concerns. The Taj Mahal reverses this priority. Its function as a tomb is simple and could have been fulfilled by a much simpler structure. Everything beyond that basic function, the elaborate decoration, the perfect proportions, the sophisticated engineering, the integration with gardens and water features, all of that serves emotional and symbolic purposes. It is architecture as poetry, as music, as prayer. It asks us to consider whether beauty itself might be a function, whether creating spaces that move the spirit and elevate the mind might be as important as creating spaces that efficiently house bodies or facilitate commerce. There is also something profound in the fact that the Taj Mahal was born from grief but has become a symbol of love. Shah Jahan did not build it to celebrate his marriage, but to mourn its end, to give form to the emptiness left by Mumtaz Mahal's death. Yet what remains is not a monument to grief, but to the relationship that made that grief so devastating. The building speaks to the 19 years they had together more than to the 40 years he lived without her. It has become a destination for couples, a place where people propose marriage and celebrate anniversaries, where the living come to affirm their bonds and hope that what they feel might endure as this structure has endured. This transformation from memorial to celebration, from death to life, is perhaps the greatest testament to the power of the Taj Mahal, its ability to hold multiple meanings, to be different things to different people while remaining fundamentally itself. In the end, the Taj Mahal survives, because it is beautiful, and beauty, even in a world that often claims not to value it, retains power. We are drawn to beautiful things. We protect them. We pass them down to our children, with instructions to preserve and honor them. The Taj Mahal will stand as long as human civilization maintains the capacity to care for it, to invest resources in conservation, to resist the temptation to see it merely as a source of revenue or as a symbol to be fought over. It will stand because enough people, across cultures and religions and national boundaries, recognize that it is precious, that it represents something important about what humans can achieve, that it would be a tragedy for it to be lost. The marble will continue to age. Pollution will continue to threaten it. The Yamuna will continue to flow past, sometimes clear, sometimes turbid, carrying the burden of a watershed stressed by climate change and human population growth. Visitors will continue to come in their millions, each one contributing infinitesimally to the wear on the floors, the erosion of details, the slow entropy that affects all physical things. But the structure will be maintained. The skills to repair it will be taught to new generations. The political will to protect it will be sustained because the alternative, allowing this masterpiece to decay and crumble, is unthinkable. The Taj Mahal has been here for 4 centuries. It will, with care, be here for 4 more and more beyond that, a gift from the past to the future, a reminder of what we can create when we dedicate ourselves fully to the pursuit of beauty and meaning. And so we come to the end of our journey through time, back from the 17th century to the present, from the moment of Mumtaz Mahal's death to the living reality of the monument that honors her memory. We have walked through Mughal gardens and watched marble being carved. We have stood beside Shah Jahan in his grief and witnessed the transformation of that grief into architecture. We have seen an empire at its peak pour its resources into the creation of beauty. We have watched centuries pass, empires rise and fall. The world changed in ways that would have been unimaginable to the builders, and through it all, the Taj Mahal endures. It endures because it was built to endure, with care and skill and an understanding that truly important work requires an acceptance of mortality, a recognition that the builder will not live forever, but the building might. It endures because beauty has power, because we are drawn to things that move us, that speak to something deep in the human spirit, that make us feel connected to something larger than our individual lives. It endures because love, even love that ended in death 4 centuries ago, still resonates, still touches hearts, still makes us believe that what we feel matters, that devotion is not foolish, that the effort to honor those we love is worthy and noble. The moonlight that falls on the Taj Mahal tonight is the same moonlight that fell on it the night it was completed, the same moonlight that illuminated it during Shah Jahan's final years when he could only view it from across the river. The moon does not change. The stars turn in their courses as they always have, but the building beneath that ancient light was made by human hands, shaped from Earth's materials according to human vision, built as a response to human emotion, and it stands, white and luminous and perfect, a testament to what we can achieve when we commit ourselves fully to creating something that will outlast us, something that speaks not just to our own time but to all times, not just to our own culture but to all cultures, not just to the living but to all who will come after. The story of the Taj Mahal is not finished. It continues with every visitor who walks through the Great Gate and sees the tomb for the first time. It continues with every conservation expert working to preserve the marble, every gardener tending the flowers, every guide explaining the history to tourists from around the world. It continues with every couple who stands before it and feels their love affirmed by the example of Shah Jahan and Mumtaz Mahal. It continues with every artist who attempts to capture its beauty, every writer who tries to describe it, every person who pauses to contemplate what it means, what it says about love and death, and the human need to create meaning through beauty. We have been privileged to witness this story, to walk through its chapters, to see the monument not just as a static object, but as the culmination of countless decisions and efforts and sacrifices, the work of thousands of hands guided by a single vision. We have seen that architecture can be more than shelter, more than function, that it can be poetry written in stone, music frozen in space, love made visible and eternal. We have learned that beauty matters, that the effort to create it is not frivolous but essential, that it feeds something in the human spirit that cannot survive on bread alone. And now as the night deepens and the moon climbs higher, as the silver light makes the marble glow as if from within, as the silence of the garden is broken only by the whisper of water in the channels and the occasional call of a night bird, as the tomb rests beneath the stars that witnessed its building and will witness its distant future, we take our leave. The Taj Mahal will be here tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that, waiting for the next visitor, the next witness to its beauty, the next person who will stand before it and feel their heart moved by the testament of a love that refused to accept silence, that insisted on speaking, but found its voice in marble and precious stone and perfect proportion. Thank you for joining me on this journey through history and architecture, through love and loss, and the human determination to create beauty in the face of death. Our story fades now, but the monument endures, as it has endured, as it will endure. The archive of history closes for tonight. Rest well, and may your dreams be touched by moonlight on marble, by gardens where water flows eternal, by spaces where beauty and meaning are one. Until we meet again in the past, sleep peacefully, knowing that somewhere in this world, under the same moon and stars that shine above you now, the Taj Mahal stands, white and perfect and timeless, a gift from centuries past to all the centuries yet to come.